Hey, how's it going? I'm Nick, and I'm your host on the Echo Academy podcast, a podcast dedicated to uncovering helpful tools and strategies that help make your quality of life at work better. On today's show, we discuss ways in which we can eliminate fatigue and burnout so we can always do our best work. My guest today is Alexander Mearns. Alex left the corporate world in late 2017 after spending 20 years in the finance industry to start Levitise, Singapore's only holistic lifestyle center. Alex's reason for doing so was simple. He struggled to get the answers he was looking for to fix his own health problems from the commercial fitness and medical industries. So, after many years of studying holistic health, fitness, and nutrition in Singapore, Australia, and the United States, Alex set up Levitise to help people like himself get the answers and make real changes from the ground up. Levitise specializes in working with busy mums and dads in their 40s and 50s, as well as C-level executives, to solve problems such as weight gain, anxiety, fatigue, and poor sleep. By working on a combination of personal training, nutrition, and lifestyle factors, Levitise helps them solve their own health concerns and achieve their fitness goals in an exclusive, private, safe, and cozy downtown environment. If you'd like to find out more about Alex and this episode, you can go to echo.academy/Alex. That's ekho.academy/ALEX. I'm thrilled to have him on as a guest today, and as you'll discover, you will too. So, without further ado, here's my interview with Alexander Mearns. Alex, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for inviting me, Nick. Pleasure to be here.
Can I understand, how did you come up with the name Levitise?
Sure. Well, really, it's a combination of levitate and wise. The idea being we want to raise up our health, but we want to do it sensibly. So that's the idea. So we want to apply a good dollop of common sense or wisdom to how we do that. So that's the idea. And .com was available.
Yeah, that's the most important.
Which is quite hard to find.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. But we use .com.sg, but we have the .com.
.com as well.
Yeah.
I always appreciate the names, because it always seems so simple or, something that anyone could think of. But then when you find out the story behind it, it's like, oh, wow, it's, really interesting.
It's not easy.
It's not
easy.
yeah. Did it take you a while?
It did, yeah.
Okay. Well, today, we're talking about I wouldn't call it the plague, but something that's really affecting many busy professionals, and that is fatigue and burnout. And, I just want to get straight into it, but in order to do that, perhaps, it's good for us to really understand, why is fatigue and burnout so prevalent in today's society?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's quite simple. I think it boils down to that modern society isn't congruent to how we should be living our life in terms of respecting our genes. We evolved over hundreds of thousands of years, in tribal groups. If you think about us ancestrally, we the men would be hunting and building shelters and would do about 4 hours work a day. The women would be, go out gathering tubers and berries and fruits and things like that. Again, doing about 4 hours work a day. And the children would hang around with the grandparents and the elderly and be educated. And that was our tribal society. And that's how we've evolved. And that's what our genetics still recognizes. These days, we have both parents working, doing, more than 8, 9, 10 hours a day. We're not living in the countryside and eating real food. We have, relationships with our computers rather than with real people. And we're just completely out of sync with our genes and just not respecting them. And, as much as people think we adapt, evolution is frustratingly slow process, and we haven't really adapted to the technology of our environment. So that's really the main issue there.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it almost sounds like what you're saying is we should actually be moving back instead of learning how to adapt to our new environment because it's not in sync with who we are as people. Is that a fair assessment, or do you think we should try to accelerate the process of evolution by ourselves?
I don't think it's a question of moving back, but just respecting where we came from and trying to replicate that as much as possible in the community. So for me personally, I'm a I have a value system, and I want to respect my values. One of my values is only eating good quality, clean, organic food, which is obviously how we would have evolved. I mean, there was no such thing as organic food. That was all food was organic, right? They weren't covering it in pesticides and glyphosate and Roundup and fungicides and chemical fertilizers, things like that. It was just natural food, right?
Right.
So one of the ways we can do that is by eating really, really clean. And eating clean doesn't mean going and having a salad. Leafy green vegetables, commercial leafy green vegetables, are absolutely laced with pesticides. It's some of the worst you can eat.
Right.
Eating clean means eating good quality, well raised fish, animals, and good quality produce.
Right.
Yeah. So that's one of the ways we can do it, if that makes sense. And then we need to look at that in every single aspect of our lives. Nutrition, movement, sleep, toxicity in the environment, every single aspect of that. Yeah.
Right. It seems overwhelming and daunting to even think about, just how much we have to control or to be disciplined in this modern society to really get ourselves in the peak condition, I would say. But if we were to really discuss and boil it down, I mean, how do we even begin to understand what causes fatigue and burnout in ourselves, let alone everyone else?
Yeah. Well, we boiled it down to 5 key elements, which are nutrition, movement, sleep, environmental toxins, and hydrations. These are the 5 sort of root causes of fatigue. And I can go into each one in detail, but we'll start off with nutrition. And here's a really, really common one. The first one is undereating. And many people don't realize that how undereating contributes to fatigue. But let's take a typical scenario. You wake up in the morning, you don't have time to eat breakfast, so you skip breakfast, maybe have a quick coffee. Then you get to work, busy morning. Lunch, you don't have a huge amount of time either, so maybe you have a salad at lunch. And then in the evening, when you go home and you've got plenty of time to relax at home, you eat a lot of food.
Right.
And then you maybe have a dessert as well, and then maybe a little bit of supper or snack later.
Yeah, almost as a reward, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so if your eating looks like a sort of a pyramid like this, very small at the bottom, a little bit bigger in the middle, and then huge at the top, right? Right. And you've probably consumed like maybe 800 calories. And this is really, really common because I look at all my clients' food logs and I key it into chronometer and work out exactly what they're eating. It looks like 800 calories is kind of normal, but actually we should be consuming more like 1,200 or 1,250. It really depends on person to person, height, weight, size, energy demands, what you're doing, exercise. But let's just say, as an example, you're eating 800, you should be eating 1,250.
Right.
So you've got a calorie deficit of 450. Conventional wisdom would say that, oh, that's great. 450 calorie deficit, you're going to burn that off in fat. Okay. Right. So 450 calories is about 50 grams of fat. So let's say you're in a 450 calorie deficit every day, you're going to burn 50 grams of fat a day. Right. Which is about 18 kilograms of fat in a year. Okay. Oh. So let's say if I ask you, Nick, if you undereat by 450 calories a day for the next year, are you going to lose 18 kilograms?
Unlikely. No.
Yeah, it's just not going to happen.
Right.
So that whole calorie counting thing is a complete and utter fallacy. It's complete nonsense. So what happens then? Why do you not burn the fat? What happens instead? Do you know?
That's a good question. I can't say that I do now.
So basically, your metabolism, which is controlled by your thyroid here in the throat, it lowers your energy demands based on your calorie input. Maybe the first couple of months you lose a little bit of weight.
Right.
Then your body says, hang on a minute, this joker is not eating enough food. Let's just lower the metabolism. That's your master thermostat, right? It's lowering it down. So now the body's saying you're only going to be spending 800 calories a day because that's all you've got coming in.
Gotcha.
So you come into the office and then you have lunch and then your body says, okay, we were using all the energy which we had to run your brain, and now you've just had lunch. We're now going to divert all the energy from your brain to your gastrointestinal tract to consume this food because you haven't eaten in a while.
Right.
And now you're going to feel sleepy and tired and fatigued. And then you're going to think, I really should go to the gym. I need to do some exercise. But your body is saying, don't even entertain that idea because you do not have the calories. You do not have the resources on board to be going out running and jogging or weight training or whatever. So you lack the motivation to do these things because you are not eating enough.
Wow,
And on top of that, your body's in starvation mode because you're not eating enough. So it's stubbornly hanging on to fat now. And this is why people say, I don't know why I don't eat anything, but I'm not losing any weight because you're not eating enough.
Wow.
It's a complete opposite of everything we've learned.
It really is because, here I was thinking that the problem, because even though I'm a naturally slim person, I store a lot of weight in my tummy area. And I thought if I eat less, I would solve the problem because, I hardly ever have time to actually exercise. But now I realize I've been wasting all this opportunity to actually eat and, focus more on the energy burning as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's not the only component to weight gain, not eating enough.
I know, I understand, but still.
Yeah, quality of food and stress as well. I mean, stress is a big one. A lot of people struggle to shift the weight around the middle if they're very stressed out.
Right.
So some of the other aspects we can look at, obviously overeating. So binge eating in the evening is a big problem. People eat too much and have a food coma, or maybe at lunch, people go out and have a really big portion of rice, maybe more than they need.
Yeah.
And then they have a bit of a food coma in the afternoon. That's quite common. Energy crashes because of the blood sugar roller coaster. Are you familiar with that?
I am, but for the people who might not, maybe.
So if you eat a lot of highly refined carbohydrate foods like pasta, pizza, bread, cakes, cookies, all this kind of stuff, noodles, you're ingesting, basically all of this stuff is just going to get converted into sugar.
Right.
And if you eat more than we're genetically equipped to deal with, that creates a lot of sugar in the blood, which is actually toxic. So the body tries to rush all this sugar into your cells, and it does that quite aggressively, which then takes so much sugar out of the blood that you then have a blood sugar low. And then when you have a blood sugar low, that's called hypoglycemia. Your body feels very weak and fatigued, and that's why you see when you walk around corporate offices in the afternoon at about 2 or 3 o'clock, people nodding off at their desk.
Right. So it's not like a natural body thing. It's just the way we are consuming and the way we're living, really.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, no, I mean, that is an any kind of thing like that's happening is an indication that something is going wrong.
Right.
It's not normal. I mean, yeah, it happens to lots of people, but it's not right. Energy levels should be, pretty much consistent all through the day.
Right.
The peak as soon as you wake up in the morning, consistent all through the day, and then they should drop off, as the sun goes down, and you just start feeling increasingly more tired.
Yeah.
As the sun goes down. Yeah. So some of the other things we can look at, movement, undertraining and overtraining.
Mm-hmm.
So, we were born to move.
Right.
If you look at our ancestors, or if you look at the blue zones, are you familiar with the blue zones?
I'm not, no.
So there was, the blue zones are areas around the world where people live a long time, or particularly long time. For
Interesting.
example, Okinawa,
Yeah.
the southern islands of Japan, the Hunza of northern Pakistan, the Abkhazians in the Caucasus, and sort of
Where are the
the Caucasus,
Caucasus?
kind of like in between sort of Eastern Europe and
All right.
south of the stands, like Georgia and around there.
Okay.
Sardinians, Accretians, Icarans in Greece, quite a lot of the southern European islands. So all these people have a large number of the population which live greater than 100. And there's a guy that went around and studied them, and he circled them in blue on his map. That's why they call them the blue zones, the blue biro.
Okay.
Yeah. And and what they found was what he found was we looked for the commonalities between them, and actually we looked at he was more interested in food and what they were eating, but we were looking at it from an exercise point of view and what were they doing. And what these people were doing were walking a hell of a lot.
Right.
A lot, like 20,000 steps a day, 2.5 hours of walking. So they're getting a lot of movement in their life. And it appears that if you move regularly at a low pace, you're reminding your body that you're alive.
Right.
If you sit around on your butt doing nothing all day, you are letting your body know that it's okay to be in a sedentary state, and we're moving away from what our genes are used to. And of course, the movement is really important for detoxification,
right?
Which is another subject I won't get into.
Could you explain a little bit more about how movement helps with detoxification?
Oh, okay. You do want me to get into that? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just curious. Not so much.
Yeah. So, well, you have a circulatory system. You have arteries and veins carrying blood away from your heart and then back to your heart, and the heart is a pump which pumps everything around the body. You also have a lymphatic system, which is similar. It's a network of tubes that go all over your body. And then so what happens is all the waste that we ingest throughout the day goes out of our blood and into our lymphatic system,
right,
and then gets moved around into our bowels to be excreted, or through our organs of elimination and detoxification. The lymphatic system doesn't have a pump like a heart. It only moves when we move.
Right. Okay.
Just like you think about those nice Swiss watches, those kinetic Swiss watches that
right,
only charge up when you move your wrist.
right.
Right. So it's just like that, our lymphatic system. And so we have an inbuilt mechanism to move that lymphatic system, and it's called walking.
Okay.
So if you don't walk, you're not detoxing. And so actually, so you can go to the gym and do 1 or 2 gym sessions a week, but you're actually only moving your body. That's 2 hours out of 168 hours in a week. If you're sitting on your butt for the other 166 hours, right, you're not doing anything for your detox.
So am I right to say that it's better to walk consistently an hour a day than it is to do 2 sessions of HIIT training, for example?
I would say yes.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, depending on what your goals are, but for general good health, yes. Again, if you look at all these people from the blue zones,
yeah,
how many of them did high intensity interval training?
Or maybe without their knowledge, you never know.
Well, yeah, the only time we would have done anything like that is running away from a lion or a tiger or something like that, which was pretty rare, right?
Right, that's true.
So they walked a lot, but then of course they were very strong. If you think about the sort of older Okinawan ladies who were carrying they didn't eat rice; they ate a lot of purple sweet potatoes was their main form of starchy carbohydrates. They're carrying huge baskets of purple sweet potatoes, like several kilograms in each arm, carrying them from village to village. This was strong work, right? Building houses, you use strong work. If you've ever, looked at builders, they're really, really strong. Or if you've ever looked at the guys that help you move house in Singapore, some of them look really skinny, but actually they're really, really strong and can lift a hell of a lot of heavy furniture around, right? And the men, of course, would be out hunting and things like that. I mean, the Hunza in northern Pakistan, they were walking up and down incredibly steep mountains all day, right? So doing a hill climb is certainly a good leg workout, right?
I can imagine, yeah.
Yeah.
That seems like intense work to me.
Yeah. So really, it's a combination of the two is perfect. It's strength-based work, functional strength-based work, and movement.
Right. And when you say functional, do you mean functional to how we operate now, or functional as what it takes for us to, as human beings, so to speak.
Yeah, good question. And the answer is the latter, yeah. So
Yeah.
functional as in what is a healthy human movement? Because we need to replicate that healthy human movement in order to respect our genes and get ourselves working as much as possible. So, sitting on chairs for 8 hours a day is not really functional.
Right.
And I know for some people, obviously, there's no choice, so that's fine. So we need to look at ways to how to counteract that. Yeah.
Right. And what about in one of your 5 factors, you talk about hydration. Um, is it as simple as drinking like 2 liters a day, or are you supposed to kind of understand? Are there signs in your body that help you understand when you need to drink a little bit more water than usual?
Yeah, good question. And it is really that simple to make sure you're getting enough water in. As soon as you feel thirsty, your blood volume has reduced by about 2 to 3%. And just a 2 to 3% reduction in your total blood volume is enough to increase your heart rate in order to pump more blood to your brain.
Right.
And of course, you're going to feel tired if you're not getting oxygenated blood flow to your brain, which is the biggest organ in the body. Actually, it's not the biggest organ, but it's anyway. It's it's really, really important. So so being well hydrated.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we want to try and strive for the best quality water we can get, but as a good start for most people, make sure you're drinking enough water.
Right.
And if you're drinking alcohol, coffee, you're in a lot of aircon environments, you're going to be more dehydrated on planes.
Right.
So you're going to need to drink more than that. And the 2 liters is really varies. Some people will need a lot more, some will need less. Then generally, the bigger you are, the more you're going to need, right? Because you've got more blood volume.
Yeah, I find myself drinking a lot of water, and not because I'm consciously doing it because I'm trying to be healthier, but more because I feel like I'm always needing water. I'm always feeling dehydrated.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because I'm slightly on the taller side. I'm not sure, but like you said, I'm always in the air conditioning room, and so that could be it. I don't drink coffee, so that can't be it.
Could be the aircon. I mean, what's your weight, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, I don't mind at all. I mean, it's not flattering, but I'm 95 kilos now.
Okay, so we have a rough rule. We take 95, we divide that by 30.
Okay.
So you should be drinking about 3.2 liters of water a day.
Interesting. Okay.
The average cup is about 240 milliliters, right? So if I divide that by 0.24, I'm just doing this on, so about 13 cups a day.
13 cups a day.
That's quite a lot of water.
Yeah, okay.
One thing that we've noticed with our clients, the better the quality the water you drink, the less you actually need, because the more hydrating that water is.
Right.
So if you're drinking a lot of overly filtered water, like reverse osmosis water, for example, that's not very hydrating, and that can just rush straight through the body.
Right.
And you're going to keep feeling thirsty.
And what about tap water?
Yeah, it's a bit of a controversial subject, tap water, because there's a lot of chlorine in it and fluoride as well. Some people think that's okay. Some think it's not. I'll say a couple of things on that point. In Europe, 97% of Western Europe has now banned the addition of fluoride to their water systems.
Wow.
97%. There's just only a couple of small pockets left. So they no longer fluoridate their water.
Right.
So either they think it's a waste of time, or they think it does more harm than good.
Right.
The only countries left that do is pretty much America, Singapore, and Australia.
Got it.
Yeah.
So what type of water should we be looking out for if we are looking to actually make that change towards healthier, cleaner water?
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, you really want to remove the chlorine from the water as well. Ideally, the idea of putting chlorine in the water is to remove any bacteria. In the old days, we would just boil the water, and that would kill pretty much most stuff. But they put chlorine in the water. But the problem is, you're drinking that water full of chlorine, and it's also killing the friendly bacteria in your gut as well.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, if you're familiar with the gut microbiome, which is quite a
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not.
Interesting new
But
topic.
yeah,
Yeah, so we don't want to go down that rabbit hole
that's
today.
fine. Yeah,
But
okay.
yeah, we have friendly bacteria in our gastrointestinal tract, which do beneficial things for us,
Okay.
and we destroy them if we
Consume too much
drink
chlorine.
chlorinated
Oh
water.
wow.
Yeah, so a good chlorine filter would be the number one thing I would look for. Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Chlorine filter.
yeah, so
All right.
just something that filters out the chlorine. Yeah.
Okay.
And then the glass bottled water is the best. Glass bottled mineral water. The problem with that is that it's expensive, and it's kind of pretty bad for the environment because you're shipping over like all these glass bottles from like Evian in France.
Right.
And obviously there's a transport cost and a carbon footprint cost associated with that.
Yeah.
But we've got to take care of ourselves before we take care of the environment, because if we're sort of sick and ill and not thinking right, then we can't help anyone. But that's a personal issue that you have to deal with. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And where do we find these chlorine filters? Is it something that's easy to purchase?
Yeah, you could speak to most of the water filter companies in Singapore. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So you've spoken about these 5 factors, nutrition, movement, sleep, the environment, or environmental toxins and hydration. But how do we take ownership of our own body, and how do we address all these factors for ourselves effectively and efficiently? Where do we start, or how would you think we should start?
Where to start? It's a good point. I think it's important to recognize what symptoms you have, and then trying to match up the symptoms with a sensible solution. And if you're not working with anyone, I guess there's 2 ways you can look at it. One is getting educated and just reading lots of information on causes of fatigue, but not necessarily just causes of fatigue, but what makes a healthy, happy human being
Right.
from the ground up. So that's one way you can do it. And then the second way would be to follow your gut instincts, which for some people will be easier than others to do. So, for example, without wanting to be too sexist, women tend to be much better at this than guys.
Yeah.
Because guys have a kind of an ego, which seems to override a lot of the sort of inbuilt gut instinct, common sense.
Right.
But, for example, you hear people say, oh, well, I think I've got I don't do very well with dairy, or I'm not doing so well with sugar or gluten or something like that, but not doing anything about it. Maybe that the head is kind of overriding the gut. And in that case, really listen to your gut and say, look, if you think that dairy is a problem for you, then maybe it's a good idea to remove it from your diet.
Yeah. It's funny because I can totally relate to what you just said, because I have a very bad habit of drinking Coke, and it's when I don't have it, I crave it, but after I drink it, I never feel as good as I think I would. But still, I continue to do it, and it's almost like now that it's ingrained as a habit, the challenge is really to eradicate the habit, even though we know what's good for ourselves. And I think that's the challenge. Would you have any advice on how to eliminate those like bad habits now that we know what's causing it?
Yeah, it's a good one. So Coke is obviously got caffeine in it. Caffeine tops up the dopamine and serotonin in your brain. So some of us are dopamine and serotonin are happy brain chemicals, and some people, due to our childhood upbringing, have less than average.
Right.
So they find they do get more addicted to things like Coke and coffee and things like that.
Yeah.
Coke's also got sugar on it as well, which is a neurotoxin and also a mental stimulant as well.
Right.
So you've got a double whammy going on in
know.
there. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's and lots and lots of people. I mean, I'm on I was on this health and wellness committee with about 15 people from the health and wellness community, and I was sort of flabbergasted to see that at least half of them were drinking Coke around the table. I was like, what is going on? But yeah, so I mean, yeah, there's an issue there. So we want to try and boost our happy brain chemicals naturally, right? So then you're going to have less cravings.
Right.
So, the first thing you want to be doing is getting good quality, clean food into your diet, right?
Right.
To smooth out your energy level. So we want to remove those energy slumps from the equation, so you're less likely to crave things. Getting a bit of movement in the morning and getting some sunlight on your eyeballs is going to be hugely beneficial. So like literally going out and deliberately trying to, look at the sun, get a bit of sunlight on you, get a bit of brightness into your life.
Yeah. And why does that help?
Well, I mean, humans are basically solar powered.
Okay.
and if we don't get enough vitamin D from the sun, and I'm not talking about from supplements, it causes a huge amount of problems, particularly if you're darker skinned, for example, like Indian from southern India or Sri Lanka or places like this. You need a lot more sunlight exposure to get the same amount of vitamin D as you do if you're lighter skinned.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, so this is why you see in a lot of countries where you see, like, say, black people in America, in the northern climates, have a lot more issues because genetically they need more sun exposure, but they're in like cold, windy cities like Chicago and stuff with a lot of
right.
Yeah, and they're just not getting enough sunlight. And it's the same in Singapore. People don't go out in the sun enough.
Right.
And I figured this out from my doctor, actually, who's Indian, and she said, I asked her, how many of your Indian clients are vitamin D deficient? And she said, all of them. I said, oh, what, like 90%? She says, no, Alex, all of them, like 100%. I was like, wow, like critically vitamin D deficient. And she was quite functional, in terms of like a functional medical doctor. So she looked at things with a quite stricter range than a lot of medical doctors. So really critically deficient. So then if you look at the symptoms of vitamin D deficiency, it's going to be your mood,
right,
depression, things like that. So if we can lift our mood, we're less likely to want to crave things which artificially lift our mood, like Coke.
Right.
Makes sense? In a
It
long-winded
does.
kind of way, yeah.
It really does. And me being South Indian myself,
Yeah.
The fact that no one told me how important just a bit of sunlight in the day is.
Yeah.
You know.
So generally, if you have like brown skin, you need 3 times more sunlight exposure than if you have white skin. And if you have very dark black skin, you need 5 times more sunlight exposure to get the same amount of vitamin D into your body as if you have white skin.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I have a Nigerian friend, and he's a computer scientist.
Yeah.
And I don't think he ever sees sunlight, so
Yeah.
I better warn him before it's too late.
Yeah, I mean, if he's doing fine, no worries. But if he's not, then literally getting his budgie smugglers on and going out to the swimming pool at on Saturday and just literally lying there and baking under the sun.
Right.
An hour on the front, an hour on the back, whatever works, without getting uncomfortable. We don't want to burn.
Yeah, exactly.
Like with everything, there is a scale, right? And it's too little is not good, and too much is not good.
Right.
It's the same. It's the same with the sun, right? It can cause a lot of harm as well. So we need to be sensible about that.
Got it.
Yeah.
Which I pardon me. Which I guess is a nice segue to the next question, which is, say we figured out all these factors. How do we kind of understand what are the things that are working or the things that are not working for us as we make those changes or try to make positive improvements in our life?
Yeah. So for us, always the number one thing would be symptoms. We need to track our symptoms, and that's what we do. We give people a very extensive questionnaires that they fill in about things that they know already about their life. So, for example, our energy levels should be consistent throughout the day. We shouldn't be craving, sugary drinks and snacks and things like that. We shouldn't be having, afternoon food comas. We shouldn't be feeling bloated after eating. We should be producing 2 nice poos a day, and they shouldn't be diarrhea, and they shouldn't be, constipated and require half an hour on the toilet to come out, right? These are all things that, we're looking for normality, right? So any break from normality is an indication that there's something wrong.
Interesting.
Waking up
Okay.
in the morning, craving a coffee because you just can't feel like you can get out of bed or your brain's just not on. That's a symptom.
Right.
Waking up with an alarm clock. I mean, if you need an alarm clock to get you out of bed in the morning, then obviously you haven't had enough sleep. So there's a symptom there, right?
Right.
Yeah. Not feeling tired at midnight. It's midnight. You should have been in bed a couple of hours ago, and you're still wide awake. That's an issue there. So
Right.
just looking at all these things, that's the first thing we look at. If for a lot of people in the modern world, though, we've outsourced our gut instincts. We've outsourced our gut feeling to modern technology, doctors, and things like that, and we rely on professionals to tell us what's wrong with us, which is a shame.
Right.
But that is the way we kind of do things these days. So another thing we like to do is logs.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, keeping track of food logs and then writing down symptoms whenever they occur. That's a great way to bring awareness and to get people in touch with themselves. So people are not aware. That helps them a lot. Just a simple one, like in the morning, you can write down whether you're feeling refreshed or tired every morning and keep a 10-day log on that.
Yeah. Which is almost like to really track, so that you don't have to guess what's wrong. Is that fair to say?
Kind of just to help you bring awareness to yourself. Yeah, I like paper logs the best.
Right.
But then you have the sort of biohacking tools as well. Are you familiar with biohacking?
I am.
Yeah.
Although I can't say that I know enough to try it.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Well, it's just really about taking control of your life and your health, and using the sort of latest technologies to do that.
Right.
So I've got so for example, using things like a step counter, which you often see on a Fitbit, on phones these days, measuring your steps. It's kind of biohacking, right? You're measuring how many steps you're doing. So that's quite a useful one. And for some people, they can find that quite useful in terms of an internal competition. I only did 7,000. I want to try and get up to 10,000. So that's one way. Measuring your heart rate in the morning, you can do that with Samsung. I know you can just do that with the phone. I think with the Apple as well. So that's a good way. If your heart rate is consistently around sort of 55 in the morning, and one morning it's at 60, that might be an indication that you overtrained or did too much exercise yesterday, and you need to take it easy on that day.
Right.
For example, or maybe you had too much food the night before, or maybe you had an allergic reaction to something. So that's a good way. So heart rate, step counters. We've got monitoring your blood pressure, which is a little bit more involved, but obviously blood pressure would be linked to dehydration and fatigue.
Right.
And then we've got things like more advanced biohacking tools like heart rate variability monitors, which measure the variation between the beats of your heart, which is an indication of your stress levels.
Right.
So that's quite useful. And then the latest would be the continuous blood glucose monitors, which are actually been designed for diabetics, but they're super useful for everyone.
Right.
And so you can slap one of these on your arm and you can work out how you respond to certain foods. And if it spikes really highly, then you don't want to be eating that kind of food. So for me, for example, I had like 2 dates, just like dates in the Middle East. Yeah. And my blood sugar went through the roof.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. It's like I might have been spooning like pure white sugar into my mouth. So dates, I know, not good for me. And I don't know if that was an immune reaction, a blood sugar reaction, but I just know that's not good. Shame, because dates are quite tasty. But that's all right. I think I can handle it.
Yeah. We'll figure out something.
Yeah, exactly. And it was not, and I found with me, white bread was an absolute nightmare. It was really bad. I was actually okay on white rice, and brown rice was okay, and sweet potatoes. So it's quite good. It was a good experiment to work out what foods were good for me and not, because what the media tells us, what the government tells us through food pyramids, and what doctor tells us, it's just too general, that advice, and we need to personalize it.
Right.
If you look at like my genetic ancestry and your genetic ancestry, it's going to be different. We need to respect our ancestral genes and eat what works for us.
Right.
Yeah.
And so just to elaborate on that point, really, if our genes play such a significant role, what's a good way to understand what's a good diet for us?
Have you got any grandparents?
I do,
How
but
how long
only
lived are
one
they?
left.
Who's the
Um,
oldest living?
the oldest living was 81.
Mm,
No, wait, 87.
okay,
87. Yes.
okay, and reasonably healthy.
I would say so. Yeah.
Yeah,
And he smokes like a chimney though, so I
yeah, that's
wouldn't.
pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But other
So
than
smoked like a chimney and died at 87.
yeah,
That's good.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, but in terms of his diet, it was purely Indian food, right?
Yeah.
For like South Indian food, there was a
Yeah.
lot of curry, there was a lot of fish.
Yeah.
They were all spicy, something
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
great.
take. So
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, is that what I should, is that what I should be respecting and following?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. But you need to look at it really. I mean, obviously, you've got to work out what works for you. But if you're not sure, looking at something that was, um, you know, similar to what your ancestors were eating would be a good way to start.
Right.
And of course, a Southern Indian diet and a Northern Indian diet would be quite different, right? So, Northern
Yeah.
Indian diet might be a little bit more meat based. You know, got lamb, mountain sort of food, things like that. If
Exactly,
you look
yeah.
at the Hunza, Northern Pakistan, there was a lot of lamb, goat, and things like that.
Right.
Southern India, it's like hotter. There's a lot more fruits and vegetables being grown, more rice. So it tends to be more towards a vegetarian diet.
Right.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that a vegetarian diet is optimal. You know, throwing in a bit of fish in there and stuff would be good.
Gotcha.
But you're probably going to find it's going to be a little bit leaner diet, a little bit less fat than a Northern Indian diet, which would be more meaty and fatty.
Right. Gotcha.
Yeah, so that's a good place to start. Yeah,
Okay.
but you really need to forget about the last 50 or 100 years and go back before then, because if you look at the last 50 years in India, for example, you know, a lot of the good quality stuff like ghee and things like that, traditionally made ghee, has gone out of the diet, and then we've got vegetable oils coming in. We've got a lot more bready type products coming in. You know, that are eaten a lot more consistency. A lot of white sugar has come into the diet. Refined white wheat flour, you know, imported from. So the diet's kind of changed a little bit. So we need to go back to a little bit more traditional. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. I should actually do some research. Maybe go back to India and kind of understand how my ancestors used.
But
to
try and
live.
find your longest living relative and look at his diet.
That one's tricky though.
But 87 is a good one, because if he hadn't smoked, you know, if smoking takes 10 years off your life, 15 years.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe he would have been 100 plus.
He could be. Yeah. And I tell you what, now that you mentioned it, he walked everywhere. So that,
detoxing the effects of the smoking, right?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Like he literally walked everywhere.
Yeah.
Like even to family functions, he was like, I'll just see you there. And he
Yeah.
walked.
Yeah.
So that could have been a really good reason.
Yeah, and if he's walking on his own, that can be quite like a meditative type process as well. So
Right.
quite enjoyable.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah, I should really break apart his lifestyle and
Yeah.
see what I can learn from him.
And generally, people that also live a long time have a sort of sunny disposition as well on life.
He
as well.
does, yeah.
Yeah, good.
He's probably one of the most positive people I've ever met. You know, always joking around, always seeing the bright side of life. So yeah, wow, okay. You can start to see trends, right?
Yeah.
They all become really familiar when you start to notice them.
Yeah, so I mean, and then you look at like a traditional sort of Chinese breakfast would be things like maybe some congee, some porridge with a bit of chicken or some fish and maybe some green vegetables, right?
Right.
And then I look at the kids in my condo that are going to school in the morning, and they've been rushed out at 6:30, 7 a.m. and they've got some a slice of white bread, you know, gardenia imported from the US probably, and or some crackers, you know, some cream crackers or something. It's like, this is not a good way to start the day, right? And it's not traditional.
Yeah.
Just I mean,
interesting.
So
we've covered a lot, you know, and I think just I mean, in the interest of time, perhaps, but also just to help people who are listening to this really summarize, in terms of how they should look at fatigue and burnout. Could you summarize for us, like how do we solve it, and then so that we can just take immediate action?
Immediate action.
It's tough to summarize it all, but if you could just give us like a few starting points, and then everything else.
Okay, I'll try and give some maybe like 3 recommendations.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Which I don't know, and because there's a lot I could give.
Yeah.
The first one, and I'll split it into 2 parts, would be to eat breakfast if you're not eating breakfast.
Right.
And the second component of that was, if you are eating breakfast, try and get it as healthy as possible.
Right.
Just to set you up for the day, get your metabolism going, let your body know that there's food incoming at the same time every day, and don't play games with your body because it'll always have the upper hand.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So that's one. So eat breakfast if you're not eating breakfast. If you are eating breakfast, then try and make it better quality.
Okay.
And that's too hard to answer what better quality looks like on this.
That's fine.
But people can work it out, right? Use common sense.
Yes, common sense, exactly.
And then let's look at sleep. And my one recommendation here, there's lots and lots of sleep recommendations, but I would recommend as soon as you get home from work, let's say that's around 7 o'clock, you want to keep all the lights in your house as dim as possible. You want to simulate an environment that we evolved in over hundreds of thousands of years.
Right.
Which is when the sun went down in Singapore, it's like 7 o'clock, we would start feeling sleepy and we would go to bed. We have a sleepy hormone. It's called melatonin.
Right.
And sunlight suppresses that hormone. So that hormone is being pushed down all the time by the sun and bright lights. But when the bright lights are gone and the sun's gone, then this hormone rises and makes us feel sleepy.
Is that why they recommend not having your computer phone next to you?
There's other that's probably from the electromagnetic frequency radiation. But yeah, you want to keep very dim lights on your laptop. Turn the brightness down on your TV. Turn the brightness down on your phone. There's also blue light filters which you can get on pretty much everything these days.
Right.
Android and Apple have them built in now. I don't know what that Apple one was for the computer, but for other computers, you've got like Iris Tech, Flux, Twilight. There's quite a few. Gotcha. So just simulating a very, very, dark environment, that's going to help you produce more melatonin and make you feel more sleepy. So you're more likely to go to bed and get a good night's sleep.
Gotcha.
So that's one. So we've got the food, we've got the breakfast, the sleep, and then the movement. And I'll split this into 2 parts. If there's not enough movement in your life, get some more movement in. And we can break that into 2 categories. If you have enough time, then do more walking.
Right.
And if you find yourself getting a bit anxious, listen to a podcast or listen to something you enjoy, some music, but do more walking, right? If you don't think you have enough time to do more walking, then we do something called like the no workout routine, where you look for excuses to get more movement in your life, which don't impact your daily schedule. For example, if you get the train to work, walk up the stairs. Don't take the escalator.
Okay.
If you feel out of breath walking up the stairs, then you should be doing that more on a more regular basis. Right. If you don't, then maybe you can jump up 2 at a time or 3 at a time, right? So always take the stairs. On the way home, maybe you could get off a stop stop early on the train and walk the rest. If you get a bit sweaty, it doesn't matter because you're going home. You can have a shower when you get home. If you can have a standing desk at work, ask your HR manager, your boss, standing desk would be great. Because that, when you have a standing desk, you don't actually just stand there stationary. You kind of shuffle a little bit.
That's true.
Yeah, so you're getting those small amount of movement in. That's really helpful. If you are, so that's good. And again, if you want to do more than that, then obviously going to a gym and learning some functional human-based movements,
right?
Adding some strength into your regime would be really ideal as well.
Okay.
So sleep, movement, and food. I think that's the 3 tips. Yeah, well, there's a lot more than that. Yeah. I mean, there's obviously hydration we talked about. I think that's more of a simple one, and looking at environmental toxicity. But environmental toxicity requires an entire podcast on itself because there's so many. And step 1 is like being educated about what they all are.
Right. Yeah. And a lot of it is, would you say, is beyond our control?
Some is, yes. Yeah. But we can always do things to help, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you so much. I mean, this was like really helpful in terms of just understanding the basics of our body and how we can, at least even in our busy lives, or busy work lives, how to really, you know, be in peak performance, so
Mm.
to speak. But I also want to, take this time to really, have you explain, your business and how it can help those busy professionals, especially those between the ages of 40 to 50, really, help, reduce weight gain, reduce fatigue, anxiety, etc. So maybe, you want to, I'm not sure if I did your business justice in the at the start of the podcast with what exactly you do. So maybe in your own words would be helpful.
Yeah, sure, that's fine. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, you did actually. That was great. Thank you for that gracious introduction. But yeah, no, well, I guess we have three components to our business. One is personal training, where we focus more on corrective exercise and sensible training and programs which are really personalized and tailored to our clients. The second component is the nutrition and lifestyle um, components, which is really what we look at a lot today. So we help educate people, coach people, help people build healthy habits into their life.
Right.
It's not easy to do, but it's so much easier if you've got someone to work with. And the third part is we have a full spectrum infrared sauna, which is for detoxification. So that is part of the program if required.
Right.
But really, I guess the three things that we do is we help provide people with the knowledge of what's going on. So we really cut through all the BS which you hear from the media and the government and your friends,
Yeah.
and really provide what the knowledge. The second is we help build you a plan to introduce these healthy habits into your life, so you can sort of get started straight away. And that third is the support, and that's
Right.
probably the most important thing.
Got it.
Provide people with the support, because we don't want to just introduce these habits, but we want to maintain them for life.
Yeah. Support is always critical, I
Yeah.
find. And if they would like to reach you, how can they do so?
Sure. So you can go to our website. It's www.levitise.com.sg, and you can reach out to us. We've got our telephone number obviously on there.
Right.
We're also on Facebook and LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn quite a bit, and Facebook, so you can sort of follow us on there.
Sure.
If you register on our Contact Us page, you'll sign up for our newsletter, which we send out every sort of 1 or 2 weeks with a lot of information,
Right.
including things like today what we've discussed.
Right.
So yeah.
And don't worry, I'll put all these contact details, in the podcast description as well. So
Okay.
yeah, for all those who are listening and want to reach out to Alex and the Levitise team, don't worry, we'll have it in the description.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, Alex, thank you so much for being part of this podcast.
Yeah, pleasure.
Yeah, I hope those listeners will be able to learn a thing or two, and I'm sure they will.
Yeah, sure. Okay, thanks so
All right,
much.
thank you.